All right, everybody, welcome to Medical Doctors for COVID Ethics International. And today's meeting, where our guest is Sasha Latipova, or the Ukrainians. What's the precise, proper Ukrainian pronunciation of your surname, Sasha?
That's the pronunciation because it's not Ukrainian, it's Tatar actually.
Okay, Latipova, good. Anyway, this is, I think, the fifth time that you're presenting to us, which is very kind of you and wonderful. So, this group was founded it was 4 years ago by Dr. Stephen Frost, a British trained medical doctor with a passion for truth. Stephen is a seasoned whistleblower and activist, and he formed this group to champion truth, ethics, justice, freedom, and health in the face of global challenges. I'm Charles Kovess, your moderator and Australasia's passion provocateur. At this time, we remember Rainer Fulmick, unlawfully incarcerated by the German government following a German show trial with a corrupt judge and a corrupt process. If anything you can do to shine a light on what's happened to Rainer Fulmick is requested and much appreciated. I wear my red jacket because red is the colour of passion, to remind you to be passionate about the fight that we are in. For 20 years, I was a lawyer, and then I changed career to become a professional speaker 32 years ago, amongst other things. And for the past 14 years, as a legal strategist, I've guided parents and lawyers in addressing vaccine injuries and medical failures. Medical failures are now the number one cause of death in America, according to John Rappaport's excellent research. I'm also chief executive of an industrial hemp company, and I want all of you to be eating hemp seed and hemp seed oil and to take an interest in industrial hemp because it's going to solve many problems on our planet. Our group is a dynamic blend of voices of all sorts of professions from all around the world. We are united in the pursuit of truth. Many of us once viewed vaccines as safe. Now many wear the badge of passionate anti-vaxxers, including me. I have yet to find a family who did not vaccinate their children who regrets the decision. I've yet to find one. I'd be very interested. Out of many, many thousands of people, and I was on the board of the Australian Vaccination Risks Network. No family that I have found says, I wish I would have vaccinated my children. First timers, you're warmly welcomed. Introduce yourself in the chat. If you've got a podcast, book, newsletter, or show, drop the links into the chat so we can amplify your work and stay connected. We're in the thick of World War III, and medical and scientific battles are amongst one of 12 battlefronts. The other one is the information battlefront. And our guest speaker today, Sasha Latipova, she's an expert in clarifying information and what's actually going on. We're 5.5 years into this fight with more to come. And there's no time for saying, I'm tired, I've had enough. Stay strong, stay healthy. Science, we know, is never done. It thrives on challenge and inquiry. Some here believe in viruses, others see them as fiction, and many are still exploring. All views fuel our conversation. Our 2.5 hour sessions are action-oriented. Afterward, Tom Rodman hosts an optional Telegram video chat. He puts the link into the chat. We'll hear from our guest presenter, Sasha Latipova, followed by Q&A. And per tradition, Stephen Frost opens the questioning for the first 15 minutes. This is a free speech haven, appropriately moderated to keep ideas flowing. Free speech is our weapon to safeguard human liberties. The communist playbook in attacking freedom is always to start with attacking free speech. If something offends you, own it. We lovingly sidestep the outrage culture and its demands to silence truth. And we choose love over fear. Fear binds and sickens. Love liberates, heals, and inspires. These twice weekly gatherings are far from mere talk. They've birthed lots of real-world actions and alliances. A key tactic in our fight is exposing medical crimes on social media, rallying behind the slogan that John Rappaport suggests to us, and we suggest to you, is medical truth now. This call can unite humanity in a surge for accountability. Share your solutions, products, or resources in the chat. The meetings are recorded, uploaded on the Rumble channel. And we're delighted to again welcome Sasha Latapova as our guest today. Her Substack is wonderful. Sasha, while I say a couple of words about you, please put your link to your Substack in the chat. I'm a subscriber to Sasha's Substack and have been right from the start. I'll give you a bit of background about Sasha. Very short background. Sasha doesn't like long bios. She's a former big pharma research and development executive, so she knows the numbers. She worked in pharma and medical devices for 25 plus years. She's now an independent writer on Substack, and she has done wonderful work in analyzing the numbers. And Sasha, you should show us some of your artwork, because in some of your bios you talk about your art. So before you start, please show us a picture of some of your art that you're happy to show us. We've also got Jonathan Haitley here, who is a sculptor. So if you look at your screen, he's in Kent, I think, no, East Sussex. And Jonathan does wonderful work. But come on, show us a picture of your art, Sasha.
All right, hold on. Let me just bring it up and uh
And I presume people can buy your art like they can buy Jonathan's sculptures.
yes, hold on. So let me just share my screen. This is okay.
Much better art than Hunter Biden.
Yeah, I don't, hold on, let me, for some reason I can't.
It's my dream to own one of her paintings someday.
Well, I'm gonna put the link to the website. For some reason, it doesn't let me share the website. Maybe because I have Zoom on the same browser. But
Yeah, put the link in, and then if you have a time a bit later, show us on the screen, because I think it'd be
yeah,
great.
so the it's just my name.com. So if you go to that website, I just put it in the chat.
Great.
You
Okay.
see my art and feel free to to purchase. I put an art piece with every Substack article. And some people are gracious enough to buy them, so I appreciate it.
Well, we should talk about it, because that's exactly what you do to keep yourself alive, and you add value, and
And
such a
sane,
great
yes.
artist. Good. So thank you, Stephen, for creating this group. Thank you all for being here. And Sasha, we're in your hands for as long as you wish to address us as usual. For the fifth time, thank you for being here.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I have some slides. Hopefully we'll go for, well, actually here's it just came up. Let me show this. So this is the art website if you're interested.
Yes, we are definitely interested.
So there are watercolors and oils, and you can see. Now let me just stop sharing this, and let me go to my slide presentation. All right, so hopefully I'll go for about half an hour, and then you guys can ask questions.
Yep, beautiful.
So what I'm going to talk about, a brief summary for those of you, many of you are following my material and probably this is familiar, but some of you may not. So just to remind everyone that what we're going through right now for the past 5 years is a global military operation. It has not stopped, it continues. And none of it goes under Trump point one, Biden, Trump point two. It's regardless of political party. It's a uniparty agenda. Obviously, global uniparty agenda. Doesn't matter what your government of what political party in power. You all probably aware now that nothing really materially changed with regard to this, and this is a global plan. So you can read about it on my Substack. Now, as far as how this is ostensibly justified. So our governments want us to believe that pandemics, first of all, exist. Second of all, represent some sort of existential threat to humanity for some reason. Because there are too many people on the planet, we're encroaching on endangered species. The viruses jump from the jungle. We're told all these baloney stories from propagandists, and this is the real data of anything that can be defined as an epidemic outbreak. Regardless of what you think about viruses or transmissible illness and so forth, this is official statistics that are published for the past 20 years for G20 countries representing any communicable disease outbreaks. As you can see, this represents about 0% of global mortality annually. Why is this now propagandized as an existential threat? It's not. It has never been. And actually, majority of this is dominated by the H1N1 influenza outbreaks, which is also, basically manufactured PCR diagnostic. that means nothing. It's a flu season. It's a exaggerated flu season. Anyway, so it's not an existential threat, has never been an existential threat, yet the governments decided that now this fake threat is an existential threat. And by the way, you can also trace their narratives to all kinds of other existential threats that they propagandize. All of them are invisible, and all of them are extremely hard to verify, such as climate change, the CO2 increase, the melting icebergs somewhere where nobody can see them, dying polar bears, again, nobody can go and count them. And when somebody goes and counts them, they're actually not dying, but thriving. All sorts of things, systemic racism, the lack of diversity, white supremacy. I mean, all of those ideas, basically, and models that they build to point to some existential threat, and then use that to gain more power, more government overreach, loot public money, and profiteer off of it, and then cause immeasurable harm to society. So as what I said, their goal is to inflict maximum harm in plausibly deniable ways, and that's why they use these existential but invisible, hard to verify threats. Now, there's been decades of predictive programming of the masses for pandemics, whether natural or gain-of-function bioterrorism initiated. All of them are fiction, as I've discussed. They don't exist. There was Event 201 and approximately 20 other practice runs and planning coordination events for pandemic preparedness criminal cartel, a global criminal cartel. There were events conducted all over the world. Systemic changes of the law have been traced by my colleague Catherine Watt, and I highly recommend everyone subscribing to her Substack, which is called Bailiwick News. It contains what I would describe as encyclopedia of relevant law, traced probably for 200 years back, that shows very clearly that this is a deliberate change of law to enable mass killing by the government and avoid all liability. And I will discuss what those laws represent today. The DoD and NATO-led public-private partnerships for pandemic preparedness are mechanisms to capture the entire society, banking, nearly all academic and private sector scientists, including internationally. And in fact, I can say that public-private partnerships are really what all governments today are. They are privatized, profiteering cartels acting outside of democratic principles, outside of constitutions or Bill of Rights, charters, and so forth that exist in our respective countries. They've designed these private, public, quasi-government profiteering mechanisms to enrich themselves, to hurt the population, reduce the population, and privatize all the Earth's resources. Funding has been to these public-private partnerships specifically for pandemic preparedness, was amounting in billions up until 2020, and at which point it became trillions. And it's used not just to manufacture weapons and murder systems, but also for propaganda, censorship, suppression of dissent, lawfare. As you know, we mentioned Rainer Förmlich. It's one of the known cases, but so obviously not the only one. And it's used against professionals, against doctors, against lawyers, anyone who can stand up and try to defend people. as my colleague Catherine Watt helped me create this picture, basically the laws that have been changed over time to enable all of this create this pseudo-legal structure of COVID crime. It involves announcing the state of war by claiming we have a pandemic emergency. But in fact, in law, this represents a country organizing itself as if it was attacked on its own territory by chemical, radiological, biological, or nuclear weapon, CBRN weapon. And this initiates the state of war and uses the military law and military appropriations mechanisms to then subvert the whole society. So they call it whole of government and whole of society approach. You probably have heard these labels mentioned. Whole of government is repeated over and over and over in various events. What they're saying is we have collapsed the entire government into the executive branch and specifically military branch, and now it's a military coup being announced on the society. The weapons that are used are EUA countermeasures funded by the DoD under other transaction authority. This is the way that they purchase weapons typically. The shield that they use is 2005 PrEP Act, which both me and Catherine have covered very extensively on our Substacks, and a few other colleagues also joined, and you can read about it. I've published a primer on this, so you can have a very extensive set of materials. PrEP Act is enormously unconstitutional. It violates numerous provisions of the Constitution. It strips people from any meaningful defense of their rights and enables the government to kill anyone using their health protocols and avoid all liability for anyone involved, even if they kill themselves as in the process, which, there are many examples where that happened. That's basically a license to kill. So they're using this three-legged stool of various laws that they in this framework to commit this crime, and they call it a pandemic preparedness and pandemic response. My colleague Debbie Lerman and I published recently COVID dossier, and I also highly advise everyone to read it. It's a listing of various documents for all the countries that we profiled in it. And the objective was to demonstrate that this military exercise has been conducted and coordinated in exactly the same manner all over the world. So we now have pretty much all regions of the world represented in this dossier. It has numerous countries and numerous sets of documents. The two main events that we've profiled are declaration of CBRN, weapons of mass destruction emergencies, EUA and PrEP Act, made by the US Secretary of Health and Human Services under Trump 1.0 in 2020. And that declaration was made retroactive. So it was made in March, but it was made retroactive to February 4th, 2020. At that point, we didn't know why they made it retroactive, but then later on it became apparent why. Because on February 4th, 2020, that's when the phone call went out from the DoD, DARPA, to Pharmaceutical Consortium, the public-private partnership, telling them that COVID has been declared, or SARS-CoV-2 rather, has been declared a national security threat. And that's how they announced the state of war. They arbitrarily declared SARS-CoV-2 on February 4th a national security threat. I received the tape from a whistleblower from a meeting at AstraZeneca, internal meeting at the end of 2020, where they were discussing the success of their monoclonal antibody, which was approved by the FDA at the time. And on this call, there are two speakers, Pascal Soro, the CEO of AstraZeneca, and Mark Esser, VP of monoclonal antibodies, discussing their history with DARPA, saying that Colonel Matt Hepburn of DARPA approached them in 2017 and proposed that AstraZeneca participates in this DoD consortium for pandemic preparedness, where DARPA will be identifying pandemic-causing viruses up front before they cause anything, based on computer models. And AstraZeneca and other pharmaceutical companies will be making drugs and vaccines for them within 60 days of DARPA identifying pandemic virus before it causes anything. And at this point, Mark Esser says that I thought it was science fiction. That was correct reaction, because as experienced pharmaceutical developer. He knows it is science fiction. It's total BS. You cannot make any drugs. Well, first of all, you can't identify a virus that will cause a pandemic one day based on the computer model. That's not possible. And actually, there's extensive literature on that matter, including a large report authored by Ralph Barrick, the very extensive report authored by Ralph Barrick and a bunch of very prestigious colleagues from National Academies of Science in the US. It's practically a book about 1,000 pages long. And it says in no uncertain terms, there is no science that can identify from a computer model sequenced genome any features of the virus, whether it's going to be infective, whether it's going to kill anyone, whether it's going to cause any disease, or it's going to be completely benign. They stated in no uncertain terms, there is no such science. Yet here we have Colonel Matt Hepburn of DARPA going to pharma companies telling them that, oh, well, we will identify those viruses and you guys will make those drugs for us in 60 days. Well, so that's the gist of the discussion. They also said that, we received the phone call from DARPA on February 4th telling us COVID was declared national security threat. Now, what was the basis for that declaration? We don't know. It's secret. It became classified immediately right after that. So nobody knows how DARPA determined that COVID posed national security threat based on what data. At that time, there was no cases. Well, there were maybe a handful of cases in the US and no illness or deaths or anything of that matter. Nothing was going on. There was a press conference on March 20th, 2020. This is Operation Warp Speed first press conference to the public. And at that press conference, Colonel Wendy Salmons Jackson, here pictured, says specifically that we have received the pathogen. They received the sample from ostensibly from one person in Washington state, and they've sequenced it and they're growing it for stock. So here, Colonel Wendy Salmons Jackson of US Army admitting that they are proliferating a biological weapon, a gain-of-function virus declared a national security threat. There was practically none of it in the United States, yet here she is growing quantities of it, much greater, orders of magnitude greater than exists as illness potentially in the US. So she is proliferating biological weapons, violating all sorts of bioweapons conventions, just by declaring it, it's defensive. It's now defensive. So we need to, we take we got some, minute quantities of potential poison in the US, but we need to grow like kilograms of it more, just to defend ourselves. Okay, so that's how they justify all of this. This is how U.S. Army gets away with developing biological weapons or spending money on developing them, and then claiming that they're doing it for defensive purposes. Now, and here's a demonstration in the data of what happened. When the phone call went out from the DoD, nothing was happening. When Wendy Salmons Jackson announced that they're growing this virus, nothing was happening. After she announced they were growing the virus, something was happening. We started getting deaths and illness. Now, of course, we now know that most of the deaths and illness were either miscategorized, false diagnosed, or induced by hospital murder protocols. But I also assert that, well, based on my research, my thinking and my theory is that some chemical weapons were used to simulate some symptoms, but they were not deadly. So that's basically my conclusion. But regardless, nothing was going on those dates, and stuff started happening after they announced it. So this is not a pandemic. This is an induced event, induced by government actions for profit and for the goal of causing maximum harm in deniable ways. So in our COVID dossier, we profiled the same pattern in every country in the world that we looked at and for which we have data. As I said, I invite you to use the dossier, use for your own research for your respective countries. All the materials are listed there with references to the sources. The overall conclusions are that this is not a public health event. The Siberian laws were invoked worldwide, and they're now supposed to last for a decade because the most recent PrEP Act declaration for COVID emergency was extended by outgoing HHS Secretary Javier Becerra in December 2024, and it's now supposed to last until December of 2029. So we have 10 years of emergency and 10 years of pandemic. The health agencies were excluded from decisions. So it's not a public health matter. It wasn't handled like a public health matter. It was falsely presented to the public as a public health matter. But health agencies were not in charge in any country that we looked at. They were not in charge of decisions. They were not in charge of communications. All the communications and decisions came from the military and security state, and they were classified, and nobody knew how they were made unless they had the highest clearance and were able to attend those closed door meetings. The policies, if you compare them to public health, normal policies are completely nonsensical, medically nonsensical, and deliberately harmful. They were designed to drive maximum fear, panic, media censorship, lockdowns, and the national and local focus, they were forcing people to focus on national and international news instead of what's happening locally. So locally, nothing is happening, but hey, look at all those fake videos from China where people dropping down. So meaning that we are under an emergency of world-ending proportions. The military was in charge of vaccine funding, supply chain, manufacturing, distribution, everything, soup to nuts, and all of the distribution was handled as a black box via military and then internationally via NATO distribution centers, avoiding all import-export, any regulations, any compliance, transparency, anything. The national security military laws were invoked in every country, and they still remain invoked. And then we obviously have seen lockstep, deliberately harmful policies in all countries. Now, I want to cover countermeasures a little bit more. This is an extremely censored information. I am one of the most censored Substacks, by the way, and the word countermeasures is also extremely censored by all the mainstream engines, news, and most of the high-profile, what's so-called health freedom accounts and commentators. They avoid mentioning this at all cost. So that's why this information is extremely important. What are EUA countermeasures? Countermeasures, it's an undefined term. It's a military term. Anything can be a countermeasure. A lock on the door is a countermeasure against breaking in. Countermeasure just means, somebody attacks me and I use whatever I have to defend myself. But that's just kind of a philosophical description. Legally, what this means in US, at least, COVID injections marketed as vaccines, in fact, reached the market under legal status of EUA countermeasures under public health emergency. This is a very important thing to understand how this works. Based on the status legally defined, they cannot be used as investigational products. Again, most people do not understand this concept. Even the smartest lawyers I've talked to who are in this vaccine fight for 20, 30 years, they still don't quite understand it. So if something is declared by law non-investigational, it means it can never become a medicine. Never, ever, until its status is changed to investigational. By law, EUA countermeasures start out as non-investigational and they stay that way. Non-investigational means I don't care how it's used in medicine and no medical laws apply to this. It's a weapon. So it's a weapon. If the status is applied to a chemical substance, it automatically becomes a weapon because you can't study it for medicinal uses until it's declared investigational. So that's why it's very, very important to understand this distinction. Now, then subsequent to that, so downstream from that designation as a non-investigational, no informed consent applies to EUA countermeasures ever, regardless of how FDA advertises them. They're not subject to any evidentiary standards for safety or efficacy. As I said, you can't collect even the data. Even if you say you had a clinical trial, it's not a clinical trial. You had a drug party with a non-investigational substance, where you fooled people, both participants and administrators, into thinking that it was a clinical trial, but it wasn't. Legally, it was not. So you can't even collect those standards. And only maybe effective criterion applies to launching them on the market. And that may be effective is an opinion of single person HHS secretary. That's it. Nothing else applies. And they've been, despite being described as investigational products, they are not, because this is legally not an investigational status of a product, and they cannot meet pharmaceutical standards. And there's also no lawful mechanism to even remove them from the market, by FDA rules or FDA law, because as I said, FDA normal regulatory mechanisms for drugs and devices and food do not apply to these products. This is a slide from the FDA lawyers themselves. There's a slide deck that we have from FDA lawyers explaining internally to the FDA staff how the process of EUA issuance works. And I took this one slide. This shows the entire regulatory pathway for these products to get on the market. As I said, it's very simple. People still don't understand this. So the declaration of emergency is made by the DoD secretary or DHS secretary or HHS secretary. They just write a memo, two-sentence memo to Federal Register saying, I believe there is a pandemic emergency. That's exactly what happened in March of 2020. They just write a memo saying circumstances exist to justify, with pandemic emergency declaration in this country based on nothing, based on just their thinking. This does not need to be justified by any data. So a lot of commentators in the health freedom community still claim that we need to collect unimpeachable data. We need to convince the entire world with data and science that these products need to be removed from the market. And that's complete nonsense. There's no data, no science ever goes into these decisions about these things, whether they go on the market or they go off the market. It's the same thing. So there's only a declaration based on an opinion of one person. And then that person, so in this case, HHS secretary, asks FDA commissioner to issue EUA authorization for these countermeasures. And that's it. That's it. Nothing else needed to happen. They can consult with whoever they want to consult, but it's just their opinion. This is how the law is written. Just their opinion to issue EUA because they think that there is a pandemic emergency. Nothing else matters. You don't see any boxes here saying that, oh, and then we have to do clinical trials. And then, so the clinical trials and everything else that went around it was fake theater to convince the public that everything, that really they are vaccines, that really they are therapeutics, and really we do have this pandemic. It was just fake theater to drive more panic, more fear, and drive everyone to self-destruct with these countermeasures. And the way to take them off the market is for RFK Jr. to terminate that declaration and terminate 9 other declarations that are outstanding for all other things. There are other determinations, including pesticides. So pesticides are also under a PrEP Act declaration with the same exact mechanism. This is direct citation from the law, just so that you see that I'm not making this up. Don't have to read all this text, but the most important part is that no matter what, EUA countermeasures shall not be deemed adulterated or misbranded. That's a key statement saying that any ingredient can be there, including poison. Well, they are poison, they are cocktails of poison, but you could put any ingredient you want. And actually any ingredient pretty much have been found there by various independent assessments, including 55 metals and radioactive materials, including DNA, including E. coli, all the in-process chemicals, everything was found there. And so, and that can be there legally, it's allowed. They don't have to comply with the labels, they don't have to comply with any pharmaceutical law for purity, conformity, contaminants, anything. And misbranded meaning you can lie about them. Anyone is allowed to lie about them legally. So that's why FDA can claim whatever they claim, that they're safe and effective. They can continue claiming that they're safe and effective forever, regardless of the mountain of unimpeachable data that Steve Kirsch wants you to collect for, removing these products from the market. That's just not true. But this is what the law says. You can continue lying about them forever as long as the declaration remains outstanding. So now, in summary, what I want to say, the vaccines for COVID and all the therapeutics and everything else were ordered as prototypes and demonstrations, meaning fakes, under DoD contracts. The good manufacturing or good clinical CGXP compliance, which is the set of laws that govern pharmaceutical products all over the world, is not possible to enforce due to non-investigational EUA countermeasure status under PrEP Act Shield. Non-investigational chemical substance that can be freely adulterated and misbranded is indistinguishable from a biological weapon. That's why these products, all of the COVID products and all of the COVID protocols, including propaganda and censorship, are all biological, biochemical, and psychological weapons by this definition, because they're just indistinguishable from weapons. And people, therefore, were deceived in self-extermination and or into illegal medical experiment with no informed consent. And by the way, in case you think that elites didn't take it because they were briefed, well, that's not true. Because if you shill for pandemic preparedness mafia, you die from their safe and effective weapons. And this is Colin Powell's VAERS death report. He died from COVID shot. Now we're coming to today, and let's see what Trump 2.0 and MAHA Propaganda Inc. are doing, and are we winning yet? What I would like to say about MAHA propaganda machine is lying is not the way to restore public trust. They continue to lie about this. So as I said, the strategy continues under Trump 1, Biden, and Trump 2. MAHA policy was authored by Kelly Means, a propagandist, pharma lobbyist, a flunky of Susie Wiles, and his illustrious father, Grady Means, who is a staffer of Nelson Rockefeller and a very known globalist and propaganda writer. So the strategy, I rephrased it as anything but vaccines. And it is anything but vaccines. If you read the MAHA Commission documents, you will see that anything under the sun is claimed to be detrimental to health, and they need to focus on it, including, food dyes and beef tallow and soda for poor. Obviously, that's favorite government way of reducing government spending. By the way, today was the day that the MAHA Commission report is due, but we're not getting it. So they were supposed to publish it to publicly available today. But we're not getting it because I think there is a big drama and throwing furniture at each other going on behind the scenes. And so it's going to Trump today, I'm told, but it's not going to the public for several weeks. We don't know when. Just to summarize what's happened in the first 6 months or so of new MAHA HHS administration, as I said, the PrEP Act declaration that was extended by Javier Becerra remains extended to 2029. Nobody will acknowledge it publicly. Nobody. You will never hear those words from any of them, that this even matters. But I can tell you, I had a discussion with RFK Jr. about this on the phone. I can't disclose what we talked about, but we did talk about it. He knows about it, and he knows the significance of it. New FDA COVID shot MAHA policy was developed actually under Biden administration. The evidence of it is that it matched perfectly with Moderna's mNEX spike phase 3 protocol when it was approved this year. So when the mNEX spike was approved this year, when I read the clinical trial design for that product and compared it to MAHA new COVID shot policy that was published by Commissioner Macquarie and Vinay Prasad, who is in charge of biologics at FDA, they matched perfectly, meaning that guidance from the FDA existed in 2022 when Moderna went to the FDA and got their okay on that protocol. So nothing changed. I'm just saying nothing changed between Biden and Trump 2.0. Nothing. So mNEX spike was approved. the self-amplifying RNA by Arcturus, will also be approved in the US this year. And that study involves no placebo control and no long-term safety monitoring. Currently, very recently, HHS announced cancellation of 22 mRNA projects, and that's why I think MAHA Commission report is delayed, because they're yelling and screaming at each other right now behind the scenes, trying to solve this. So they canceled 22 projects amounting to $500 million, and publicly stated, both RFK Jr. and Jay Bhattacharya stated that this is because mRNA platform is no longer viable, or they don't think it's viable for vaccines. The question is, okay, well, why then you approved all these other vaccines, and why do they still remain on the market if you think that they're not viable? Well, that's a rhetorical question. And the $500 million was reallocated to so-called gold standard universal FluVax platform, which I also written about extensively on my Substack. And this platform happens to be patented by Jeffrey Taubenberger, who is a replacement of Anthony Fauci at NIH. And that platform involves toxic chemicals like BPL, and also is grown on aborted fetal cells. But otherwise, it's safe and effective and wonderful. The new this is what they call evidence-based. Okay, that word needs to be replaced by something now, because it's been completely trashed by these people. There is no evidence that went into this. I will show you some examples, but this is what they dreamed up to cover up for the fact that they won't admit that these things are countermeasures. They're still trying to cover up lies with further lies, and that's what drives you into a corner eventually. And this corner is called eugenics, avert eugenics. Okay, so we're now looking at avert eugenics strategy, to which both Macquarie and Prasad admit and put their names on and publish in New England Journal of Medicine. And that strategy involves identifying those who are vulnerable or unfit and giving them straight poison. So here we have some wonderful examples. The vaccines approved without placebo control studies and without long-term safety monitoring, only on measuring antibodies. So they measure antibodies, and then they declare that these things safe and effective for about 75% of the US population, including 65 years and older. And all of these other categories listed on the left-hand side that they deem vulnerable or unfit. And they include very interesting categories such as physical inactivity and pregnancy and recent pregnancy. So all pregnant and breastfeeding women. And then there are some other very interesting things like cardiovascular disease and COPD and diabetes, which are all cardiovascular related. So they prescribe these shots to those people, whereas at the same time, FDA put a warning label on all these mRNA shots saying that they cause myocarditis. So now the FDA is on record recommending myocarditis causing injections to people with cardiovascular disease. Okay, so that's what I call eugenics, because it is. Now, I've also reviewed CDC recommendations for pregnancy. That's been a pretty controversial subject, because there were announcements made that they're not recommending them for pregnant women anymore. CDC removed that recommendation from the first page where you look at the specific populations recommendations for vaccines. You can see it here. So they are still recommending RSV shot for all pregnant women and Tdap. I'll address RSV in a few minutes. For pregnancy, it says C notes. Okay, so but in another page, it still says that pregnancy, so vaccination, COVID-19 vaccination is recommended for women, for all women who are pregnant. Okay, so it's on another page of the CDC. Now, I went and reviewed the papers that CDC cites as a basis for their recommendation for all pregnant women to receive COVID shots. So they are basing it on evidence. They're claiming that SARS-CoV-2 causes excessive risk to pregnancy. Okay, so I went and looked at those studies that they cite. And I published a detailed review on my Substack, so you can see it here, the reference. But in conclusion from those reviews, I can say that none of the studies used clinically validated diagnostic of SARS-CoV-2 COVID. So which you can't say that, I make a public health policy based on a study where I used a non-diagnostic technique to claim somebody has SARS-CoV-2 virus or COVID illness. Okay, so that's invalid in science. And it's 100%, and PCR applied in medicine is 100% fraud because it has never been clinically validated for anything. It's just a lab technique. Go play with it in the lab, sequence your genomes, whatever you want to do, but you can't make any medical recommendations, decisions, especially interventions, especially in pregnancy, based on this junk. It's junk. None of the studies demonstrated any risk to pregnancy specific to COVID illness, none of them. And most of them were not designed to do so. Some demonstrated lower risk in pregnancy from COVID. All demonstrated that SARS-CoV-2 does not transmit to newborns. Very interestingly, all of them, including large meta-analysis of 190 studies published. SARS-CoV-2 doesn't transmit from mother to baby, but you know what transmits? mRNA shot. That's been shown in all the preclinical toxicology research. And all of them demonstrated that when HHS murder protocols for COVID were used with sedatives and ventilators and remdesivir, they killed approximately the same number of pregnant women in the hospital versus non-pregnant women in the hospital, 0.2%. And when those COVID murder protocols were not used, pregnant women did not die from COVID at all. So that's what this review actually demonstrates. And the CDC has these studies cited as evidence that all pregnant women should receive COVID shots. As far as RSV, also recommendation for all pregnant women to receive RSV shots. The 3 vaccines available in the US, one of them is mRNA shots. So they're still recommending mRNA shots for all pregnant women. So that's a mRNA shot from Moderna. And 2 others are not much better. They contain things like salmonella, of which it will be present in the injection, whether killed or not killed. All the in-process steps of manufacturing end up in the final product of vaccines. That's always been the case. There's also a toxic substance derived from this saponaria tree. And that's one of the methods to induce anaphylaxis. This was demonstrated by Charles Richet in 1913. He received Nobel Prize for this work. And they're also formulated in liposomes, which is another word, another definition of LNPs. So they're all extremely toxic, but they're all pushed on pregnant women. And the most recent development is the new MAHA ACIP. So as you know, RFK Jr. fired all the previous members of Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and replaced them with 7 members or 8 members, I forget, who are headed by Robert Malone and Martin Kulldorff as co-chairs. And so this illustrious group assembled in July, and their first recommendation was to protect babies from RSV and pregnant women by recommending RSV monoclonal antibodies made by Merck. And that was a gift of about $1.6 billion to Merck that Robert Malone organized. How nice of him. And this was all because a fake computer model called RSV, it doesn't exist in reality. Even if you believe it's a real virus, only about 100 infants are documented to die with it, not from it, in the United States annually. However, the RSV monoclonal antibody that they've recommended killed more babies in clinical trials than whatever was used as placebo. I highly doubt it was a placebo. I think it was another vaccine. But now our new Health Freedom MAHA ACIP thinks that the risk of death or lifelong injury to infants is preferred versus Merck not having $1.6 billion. So that's where we are. That's how we're winning right now. Finally, people were asking me, well, why are you such a doom and gloom and black pillar? You need to come up with solutions. So what are the solutions? Well, there are some very simple solutions. The number one solution to unite everyone is to start telling the truth to people, regardless of political affiliation. So let's start by telling the truth. First of all, the mRNA DNA vaccines need to be properly regulatorily reclassified into gene therapies, which is what they are. And also, secondarily, HHS needs to remove the FDA's ability to arbitrarily declare anything as a vaccine as long as they just say it's intended to use as a vaccine. And once they do that, apply a totally different regulatory framework, which excludes long-term safety study, which excludes toxicology, excludes clinical pharmacology, excludes safety pharmacology, excludes genotoxicity, carcinogenicity, and allows them to conduct complete fraud in science. Okay, so that needs to be finished. Nobody is even talking about it. Nobody is even mentioning it. It's not even anywhere on MAHA Commission anything. You never find it, but I'm telling you that. So if they started by doing that, we would be miles away from where we are right now. Then secondarily, again, telling the truth, start disclosing properly to the public what you're giving to them. This requires, by the way, banning nothing. They don't need to ban mRNA even. They just need to provide informed consent. That's what I'm asking. And in fact, this is a requirement under PrEP Act. The PrEP Act states that recipients of countermeasures must receive a full disclosure of all known risks about them. And known risks include the following categories: that these products are countermeasures, that they are not pharmaceutical products, that it's a military product that cannot be mandated, and can only exist when US government believes that the country is under attack by seaborne weapons. The non-investigational, non-experimental status of these shots must be also disclosed, and the fact that this precludes an ability of anyone to conduct clinical trials for it or collect any safety or efficacy data also must be disclosed. The BLAs to Pfizer and Moderna or biologic license applications, full approvals by the FDA, must be revoked because they're legal fakes. It's not possible to have a BLA for a non-investigational substance. They need to be properly labeled as countermeasures, and the also public needs to understand that in case they're injured by them, even those blue-pilled COVIDians and liberals who love vaccines, they must understand that if they're injured by them, in that remote chance that the safe and effective vaccine injures them, there is no way for them to get any compensation. They go to a completely fake administrative procedure, not a court, called Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program. And it removes their constitutional rights. They waive their constitutional rights by receiving this substance. And this program denies about 98% of claims and pays nothing. So as long as this disclosure is made, that's what's called informed consent. And that's the first step that needs to happen. I also outlined a few other measures in this article on my Substack, and you can see and read and understand my points. So at this point, I'd like to open to questions.
Wow, Sasha, great job. Incredible complexity. I love it. And one of the rules that applies to your brains, everybody, is that if you don't understand something, you will never remember it. You can only remember something if you understand it. And Sasha, taking us through it again was a wonderful reminder of the deliberate complexity. One question, I have a couple of questions. You came from a pharmaceutical background. Do you remember the anti-vaccine warrior Brandy Vaughan, who is now dead?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think at the age of 51, and she said, if I die, it wasn't suicide, it was reported as suicide. And Erin Elizabeth has also documented over 100 integrative doctors who have spoken out against vaccines who are dead.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all of them claim to have been suicide. So my first question is what information do you have on Brandy Vaughan? And there was another lady, Tony, somebody who I saw early in the piece. And in fact, I was on meetings with Brandy Vaughan before COVID hit the scene. So number one is the pharmaceutical industry's willingness to knock people off that are in the way. What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, they do have the willingness, but I don't have any. I never met Brandy. I don't have any information about her.
Yep. Okay, so everybody, please take an interest in Brandy Vaughan. She did one of those recordings that said a bit like Virginia Giuffre, who also was alleged to have committed suicide, and she also did a video that says I would never commit suicide. Secondly, you said that the PrEP Act is unconstitutional,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that idea. I've read material on that. What's the simple explanation of the basis on which it's unconstitutional?
Right. So there's also on Catherine Watt's Substack, and on I republished it as well. There was a letter. She wrote an article about the history of how this law was passed in 2005, and at that time, as usual with these things, it was introduced by Republicans. Democrats opposed it. The Republicans in Congress claimed it wasn't a law. It was slipped into the appropriations bill for Katrina hurricane relief, so that you could hold those funds hostage, so that everyone complies with this and votes for it. And so they introduced it around Christmas on the weekend at night in a multi-thousand-page Katrina relief bill, and claimed it was just part of the military appropriations. And but the Democrats were not born yesterday, and they organized themselves quickly, and they obtained a legal opinion letter from a constitutional scholar, Edwin Chemerinsky. And it's a great letter. I agree with all of it. And then, based on that letter, several Democratic senators spoke against PrEP Act, including Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Richard Byrd, and Ted Kennedy. They all spoke about how unconstitutional PrEP Act is. And I can sign up to every word that they said.
Okay,
I
very
completely
good.
agree with everything they said. Because it violates several amendments of the Constitution. It fundamentally strips the rights of citizens to petition the court, to seek redress for their injuries, to sue manufacturers for liability. So based on those grounds, it's completely unconstitutional. And so today, again, nobody mentions it except Thomas Massey, who recently introduced a bill to repeal PrEP Act. I think it's going to go nowhere, but I applaud his stance, and I think everyone should support him based on this. So that's the only person in Congress who is actually doing or trying to do anything about it, or even bring attention to it.
Okay, and thank you for that. That is most helpful, Sasha. And with Catherine Watt, I think that investigation, for any links that any of you have, please take on board that possibility for the US. And there's one question that Jerry puts in before we go to Stephen. Does the US government control the Department of Defense or not?
I don't think so. My personal opinion, no. The US government is controlled by the Department of Defense, who is acting on behalf of private interests primarily.
Yeah. And what about HHS? Does
Same
the
thing.
government? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the answer, Sasha, and well done on your wonderful work that is shining a light. And congratulations on being one of the most censored writers. Clearly, you are over the target. So, Stephen, over to you for the next 15 minutes.
Hi, Sasha. We haven't seen you since the dark days of 2023 or 2022, even maybe. I don't know how we've missed you. So I just wondered, it just seems crazy to me, this. So you've got Trump saying that he's fighting for the people, and yet there's a state of emergency in place, and nobody in the Trump administration, MAHA, could justify it, because we know, Sasha, by different means, that there was no pandemic. So, but the point was that the world was damn nearly destroyed, and people are still trying to recover from their Stockholm syndrome, which was caused by all this nonsense. And it seems to me that on the one hand, they're invoking national security when what they intend to do is treasonous. And that Trump is in power now, and that Robert Kennedy Jr., both of them are completely unable to tell me and tell you why there needs to be a state of emergency in the United States for 10 years. And it was renewed in December of 2024 after Trump had been voted in as president, but not before, but before he was actually president. So, but not much before. As I understood it, it was just before the end of December 2024. And of course, what better time to bury bad news, you know? But why can't Trump and Robert Kennedy come clean with the people and say, we've got this state of emergency in place now, and yes, ask us why, whether we can justify it, because we can't.
Well,
And
yeah,
who-
that's my point. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, I think Trump is completely sold out to whoever financed his campaign, which is, well, we know who. It's Peter Thiel, all the tech bros, and all the pharma companies. So those are two main drivers. Well, and then military, but the military actually runs the government, and so they dictate who is going to be in power.
Yeah, so it's actually immaterial who is president. So it's not
it's immaterial. Yeah, it's
so
immaterial.
it's not a fault of Trump. But again, the American people don't know this. The people in the rest of the world don't know, because so what happened in 2020? I thought, this is outrageous what was happening in the United Kingdom. And then I immediately thought, well, they're not going to allow this in the United States, but they did the next day. I was just stunned, and I'm still stunned. And I still don't understand how, you know, changes in the law can justify treason. And this was treasonous. And in addition to that, it was just evil, because look, every doctor in the world should have understood that taking people's isolating human beings who are highly social animals was extremely dangerous. Every doctor in the world should have understood that. But guess what? They didn't. And I was just mystified. So, Sasha, how on earth can you justify the unjustifiable? So there's a national emergency in the United States for 10 years, and it's going to last for another, wait a minute, we're 25 now, 2029, December. So 4.5 years to go. Look, there was no pandemic. So all these measures, you know, whether it was national security or whether it was medical measures, they were all fake. And it was just a pack of lies, the whole thing. And I don't understand how the major crime here, which is treason, in my opinion, can be overlooked.
Yeah, no, I don't understand either. Well, I mean, I can guess. They're continuing this emergency declaration. One reason is to continue pharma's profiteering off of it, and because
Yes, but that's treasonous, surely.
Yeah, Susie Wiles runs the government, and Susie Wiles is a major pharma lobbyist, and so that's one.
Susie
and then
Wiles runs the government. I know she runs the White House, but I didn't know she ran the government.
Well, she kind of runs the government because she runs the White House, and so everything is done with her approval. And Trump is internationally trying to convince everyone to buy U.S. treasuries, and that's not working. The dollar is failing, and that's the fundamental reason behind all of this. Basically, is because their mechanism of control stems from their monopoly on money, or the reserve currency in the world that's used in the world, the dollar. And you know, they are desperately trying to maintain that control, but it's collapsing as we speak. The most recent treasury auction, only the supply was bought only at 50%. So they wanted to sell something like 56 billion. They only sold 25. And that's an evidence of collapsing control structure. So he is making a lot of moves, like a restructuring of a failing casino hotel, which he's very familiar with. And part of this is you also need to contract a balance sheet, and the balance sheet that they deal with is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And that's why they're so obsessed about killing the elderly and reducing fertility as much as possible. So sterilizing women through these injections and killing the babies and reducing their lifespan by vaccinations. So all of these moves can be traced to the same situation. All I'm saying is, yeah, that's how it looks. They will never admit it, and that's what we have to understand. And we personally, I can't speak for Trump, but we have to take our trust away from these people. Stop applauding MAHA, stop following MAHA, stop giving them money.
Well, yes, but there's all the alternatives are even worse, in my opinion.
No,
but
the alternative is for everyone to come to the truth. We have
well,
to.
yes, but you can't run America on everyone coming to the truth.
We're not running America. No, but none of us.
Well, no, but someone has to run America.
Well,
otherwise
they
chaos.
can deal with that. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is all of us personally and collectively to come to the truth.
Well, I understand that, but that means you can't just kind of dispense with Trump and all governments because it'd be just chaos within days. That's all I'm saying. So I agree, we need to do the right thing, and people need to understand the importance of the truth, because we can never solve any problem if we don't know the truth. So we always have to find out what the truth is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'm just very frustrated. I think I would like to. So you say there was no pandemic because they changed the law, and there was no I say from a medical point of view, there was no pandemic. So we were taught at medical school a deadly virus, if you believe in viruses, which I'm not sure I do at the moment, or for quite a long time. But it's not helpful to start arguing against viruses, because the first person you come across in North Wales says, oh, but I had chickenpox. And so you've got to argue about chickenpox when you're actually trying to argue about the pandemic, which was not a pandemic. Oh, there's one more thing, Sasha, I wanted to ask you. So do you know what happened with the swine flu pandemic in 2009? Because that was on the Council of Europe website, and still is, as far as I know, the investigation into the swine flu pandemic. And do you know about that?
I haven't looked into it. It may have been one of the trial runs, and it didn't quite go through, and so they manipulated some more laws and pandemic preparedness mechanisms. It may have been one of the, they've done a lot of practice runs, and this was one of the iterations, but I haven't specifically looked into it.
Well, I was working for the military at the time, so I wasn't working as a military officer, but as a doctor. And I remember there was a lot of hush-hush talk amongst the senior officers in the officers' messes, and I was trying to work it out. But then so you just have to look at the Council of Europe website. It paints the whole 2009 swine flu pandemic as a fraud, but I think they were possibly trying to do what they did in 2020. But
yeah,
what I'm saying, Sasha,
yeah, quite likely. Yeah,
you can't have it both ways. So I'm not criticizing Trump, because you've said yourself, and we agree that it's immaterial who is president when it comes to this. But Trump needs to, and RFK Jr. So I think it's probably better to go for RFK Jr. He can't be taking a salary for being HHS secretary, and at the same time there's a medical emergency which isn't a medical emergency, and that is kind of propagating or causing the false narrative to continue to circulate the word. So people are still talking about COVID and RSV and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, well, I don't think pandemics are possible. Do you see?
Yeah,
so I'm just so frustrated. I think you and I maybe can work together, because we've had RFK Jr. as a guest, but I think so I'm one of the few medical doctors in the world who believe, they've got another one on the call, Thomas Binder. He believes the same as me, that there was no pandemic. And furthermore, that pandemics can't occur. It's a false construct, which they started in the 1980s with HIV. Well, it could have been before that, HIV and AIDS. AIDS was a false diagnosis, so was COVID-19. So the diagnosis of COVID-19 is not even true. And so people say, oh, but I had COVID. No, they didn't have COVID. They were terrified. So goodness, so any symptom in the book, but there was no symptom which was pathognomonic for COVID-19. Anyway, thank you so much, Sasha. It's great to hear you.
Yeah, I agree. One question before we get to Mark. Thank you, Stephen. from Shasta, because her computer's not working, is could RFK stop the PrEP Act solely?
PrEP Act declaration, yes. So not the law itself, he can't
No,
revoke the law,
the
the Congress
declaration.
needs to do that. But the declaration on which all of this is hinging, he can remove himself that, and he's the only person who is authorized to do that in the US law.
That's right, on your triangle, on your steps, it requires, the last step is the declaration of the Secretary of HHS to declare an emergency situation. Okay, that's the answer. Thank you. All
So
right,
it
Mark
seems to me
Steele.
absolutely incredible that a fake act, a fake change in the law, whatever, you know, that can cause all this chaos. That everybody can blame the PrEP Act is just crazy. We need to take away the damn PrEP Act, but we need to look at all the other laws which were changed, and not just on this, but on torture too in America.
Well, the PrEP Act doesn't apply in the UK, Stephen.
Yeah, in the UK,
Yes,
there
but
are, so
yes, but if America's leading the show, then it does apply in the UK.
It does, because so we've, you know, it's a longer discussion. I've done presentations on Europe specifically and other countries. First of all, there are mutual recognition agreements between all of the regulators, pharmaceutical regulators in the world, FDA, EMA, TGA, the Health Canada, UK, MHRA. So they all have mutual recognition agreements, which means that they can all go with the say-so of the other part. Like usually it's FDA says something and they all follow, so that they don't have to do any of their own independent assessments. And that's how they, like, part of it was done through that. And the second part is through contracts that all the countries signed, supply agreements with pharma companies, where the language kind of copy from PrEP Act, that they suspend all the regulations and import-export laws and all that, and they can't enforce, and they can't change their country laws to prosecute farmers in their countries. So they all have very similar stuff.
Well, I think one of the problems is that everybody likes detail too much. I think when you're trying to solve something like this, you have to look to see whether there was fraud, whether this is treason. These are big issues. And everything else pales into significance, including the details.
All right, so on we go. So I make the point for those watching the recording that there is an excellent argument that governments can't declare contracts to be confidential under constitutional law if it's funded by a government. I put that out there, same in Australia, and it is going to be, if the judges ever get uncorrupted, it will be a wonderful opportunity in years to come to investigate those contracts, because I predict there will be a light shone on them. All right, Mark Steele, that'll help you on that, segueing to you on getting the contracts under which all these laser weapons masquerading as 5G cameras have been installed. Mark?
Thanks for that, Charles. Yes. Well, the contracts I'm actually having a run at SSE, Scottish Southern and Electric, because they have the contract to power up and maintain the weapon system that we've discovered. But the issue Sasha was talking about before, the contaminants in the shots, are specifically for the mesoscopic radar type technologies that have been deployed in cities for the low emission zones. So what we've discovered in London is a large deployment at 17,000 junctions, laser detection range and weaponry, with phased array electronic assault weapons, actually radar guns. They are literally guns, but they're phased array and they've got lots of power output. So the planned cull, we're just at the start of it. This isn't over, it's the beginning of it. And unfortunately for the people who can be tracked, traced and terminated, it's not going to be very good for them. And it's all tied into the IAE. It's the 802.15.6 body area network technological deployment. So all these sensors are all deployed to track the contaminants that were actually injected into people. So it's quite an interesting. It's quite an interesting future. We do have to get a finger out, because this is just the start of it. It's not as if they've stopped. We do have a number of court cases, and I'm still waiting for a reply from the court case that we had against Transport for London. And in that court hearing, I tendered 60 exhibits to show what Transport for London had deployed was in fact an electronic assault weapon. So the low emission zones are basically a militarization of the zone because somebody's planning a mass murder. 60 exhibits. Transport for London didn't present one. They had two, a skeleton argument and a statement from one of their technical people, but no substantive evidence to refute. And when their barrister was given the opportunity to question me on the exhibits and my statement and skeleton argument, he refused to. So that was very strange. Obviously, I was looking forward to that bit, a bit disappointed. I think the reason for that is they've got nowhere to go. So we're going to see what happens, and we'll see how corrupt the judicial system is or isn't. But what I can say, the judge who was presiding over the case, it's the lady who presided over the Julian Assange case, where she forced the Crown Prosecution Service to release information about their communications with the Swedish authorities. So that might be quite interesting thing to watch for. Hopefully,
very corrupt, Mark. But what's her name, by the way? That woman?
Foss.
Pardon?
Judge Foss. Foss. Oh, you're asking his next.
I don't recognize that name, and I knew a lot about Julian Assange.
Yeah, it was the Julian Assange case where the CPS were actually speaking to the Swedish authorities, and the investigative journalist who asked for the information and they refused. So she was over that case, and she actually demanded that CPS release it. So yeah, Judge Foss. But there was now she's quite a senior judge for this first tribunal case, and obviously we've got another few bites at the apple. I think it's really important that people understand that this is the start of a war. We're nowhere near even halfway through it. You know, it is just a precursor, and unfortunately, lots of people are dying, but they're dying through contamination, what I call collateral damage. The people who've actually died today, who've been murdered with a bioweapon.
Mark, what's your question for Sasha?
The question for Sasha is, have you done any research in relation to the connectivity between the bioweapons injection and the electromagnetic radiation deployment, the weapons deployment?
I looked into some of it. I did not see any good evidence that the substances in the vials actually interact with anything. As I said, they don't have to comply with anything. Not a single vial was found in conformity with anything. They contain such broad variety of things that it's hard to imagine that, like, if you want the technology working, and I've made a whole bunch of technologies work from academic IP to implementation. If you want it working, it has to be very consistent. So when I find something that has so many things in it, almost like infinite variety, it's hard for me to say that this is anything to do with technology. I can say it's definitely poisoning. I know numerous mechanisms by which it poisons people, and it will shorten the lifespan at the minimum, but it can kill and disable. I mean, there are some things that, you know, some injected substance. Obviously, you can inject a tracer into a person. You know, it remains unclear how long that tracer stays.
Well,
detectable.
Sasha, what we found was upconverted nanoparticulate contaminants and lanthanides in particular. Now, I was looking for lanthanides due to a DoD project for tracking wet on the battlefield.
Yeah, I understand there are lots of materials there that can interact electromagnetically. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, metals can interact electromagnetically. But again, if that's the mechanism, then it has to be present consistently. And it's not present consistently. And also, it's a question how long it stays in a person. It may be that it's eliminated in most people, then in which case this whole setup is kind of pointless. So maybe it's part of the PSYOP. It could be part of the PSYOP that they put these they will probably use electromagnetic weapons, and they want to, and that's why they're installing them. Whether there is a direct link and some sort of mechanism, that hasn't been demonstrated. And to demonstrate it, at least like somebody needs to inject this thing into an animal and show that this weapon works at what range, how consistently, what it does, you know, like that I have not seen anywhere. I've seen a lot of people saying There are patents, there are documents, there this, does that. It's all okay. Yeah, I register it, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I don't see a demonstration of this weapon.
Well, the Neurostrike weapon, it was well documented about the Neurostrike weapon that the PLA, the two PLA defectors stated that the Chinese had deployed a weapon system called Neurostrike in the West. Now, obviously, I've been looking for it for quite a bit, and we discovered it in what we're being told as a camera. Is they're not cameras at all, and we've got this mass deployment. It's not just London. I mean, every city in the United Kingdom's
Again, they may be described, they may exist somewhere in some implementations, but as I said, like, you know, it's not something that I've seen consistently present in these shots or in people, or, you know, so I can describe numerous mechanisms how they kill and injure, but this one is a bit tenuous to me.
Yeah. Well, we'll soon find out.
Thank you,
Thanks
Mark.
for-
So next question, I think Charles is having a bit more of sleep, which he deserves. So Carrie is next, and she's a medical doctor in, I think, Florida. Hello, Carrie.
Hi, Sasha. I was just wondering, is there a possibility that RFK Jr. wants to continue the medical emergency in order to possibly alleviate all of these shot injuries? Because that is a medical emergency. It really is. All of the turbo cancers, all the injuries, that's a medical emergency. So could it be that he does not want to rescind it, the declaration, in order to be able to treat everybody once we find very effective treatments, which we don't have yet? That's one question.
There's no connection between this and treatments. The laws that are invoked in medical emergencies do not envision treating people or dedicating special resources to treating people. And as you said, there's no treatment there, and I'm willing to bet it's not possible to treat the injury that these shots induce because it's induced on a cellular level, and it's such fundamental. The mechanisms of injury are so fundamental to biological nature, actual nature in general, that it's not possible to treat. So the two main mechanisms by which these shots destroy, and actually it's common to all vaccines. One is loss of zeta potential, which again, very few people talk about.
Right.
Zeta potential is what makes clouds fluffy and what makes people look young and beautiful, athletic, and healthy. It's our electrical charge. Our electrical charge that expands our tissues and delivers the blood and oxygen and nutrients to all corners of the body. And incidentally, that's how they cause bizarre weather events and destroy people's health, is by the same mechanism, injecting cationic substances into colloids, which is clouds. If you inject a cationic substance, which is metal, aluminum, or some other metals, they will collapse and you will have a mega storm. And the same thing happens in the human body. If you inject cationic substance into bloodstream, you cause precipitation, just like with the cloud. You cause precipitation, which is microclotting, fallout of various components of blood, including lipids and proteins deposits, cataracts, the atherosclerotic plaques, arrhythmia, renal failure, you name it, everything. The gout, kidney stones, gallbladder stones, all of it, they're precipitants. And precipitants are caused by loss of zeta potential from colloid. And so that's how it fundamentally destroys. So it affects everything. And then the second mechanism is causing anaphylaxis to pretty much everything, every normal proteins that you encounter. And that's described by Charles Richet in his Nobel Prize winning work in 1913. So as I'm saying, vaccines have always been a deliberate poisoning strategy because the experts cannot claim that they don't know something that was in their field and they received the Nobel Prize. So that's why, and that's why it's not fixable, and it's not why RFK Jr. is extending that declaration.
Well, I appreciate That's just lovely. The description of the clouds versus the body. I love that. Thank you.
Everything, the whole world is a colloid. Atmosphere is a colloid, Earth is a colloid.
I don't know. I
humans
just
are
like that.
colloids,
Thank you.
plants. And yeah, and so what they cause by these shots, by all of the shots, not just mRNA, but all of the shots, they cause premature aging because aging is desiccation, it's drying, it's shrinking. What it is because you're losing first of all, you're losing capillaries first, you're losing the micro circulation first, and then it affects everything. That's why you have wrinkles and skin looks like crap, and so that's why. And that's why actually there's one of the common things in the mRNA injured people, they look gray because they're suffocating essentially at the cellular level.
Right. Right. That's beautiful. Thank you for describing that. I was wondering, do you know if the pesticide immunity bills have passed? You said that the pesticides are under the same sort of countermeasures.
Yeah, I don't know the status of that bill, but as I said, people started saying, "Oh my God, this is going on." I said, "Well, they're already under PrEP declaration. They have been
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's one PrEP declaration extended for use of pesticides and nerve agents, and that's been since I think 2009 or something. I mean, it's
that's awful.
been on the books for a while.
So that bill doesn't really matter, right? Because it's already there.
I mean, it should not be like it should be fought, of course, but it's in the bigger scheme of things.
I had no idea. Thank you for pointing that out. Do you know of any other previous EUA products before COVID?
They did use that for, they did use the PrEP Act declarations and EUA countermeasures for buying things for national stockpile. So they were not using it. The difference between what they were doing with it between 2005 and 2020 was they primarily bought it for military use, for stockpile, and they would inject service members with those things. So I found a lot of evidence. Well, anthrax vaccine.
Anthrax is what I was thinking. Yeah,
was one of the better known ones. But I found other evidence that they were injecting service members with total BS poisons, such as, for example, the plague. They were injecting service members with the plague and telling them that it's an approved vaccine. And this was in 91. A vaccine was approved only in 93. And then quickly removed because it was too poisonous.
So that was 91 before the PrEP Act, even.
Yeah, even before PrEP Act. So that was their standard practice of experimenting on military service members. But then they were getting caught too often and were losing in court, and that's why they've implemented all that.
It's very interesting to me that the extension till 2029 is sort of coincident with the 2030 goals of the WEF. Don't you find it interesting?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Carrie. And the next questions are from Albert, who is the VAERS expert. You know him, I think, Sasha.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Sasha. Excellent work. God bless you. I pray for you and a hedge of protection around you and your family always. You do great work. I know I don't have to tell you, but maybe the rest of the group, that today is Bobby Kennedy's 6-month anniversary of when he got sworn in. And so that's August 12th. And, I made a public speech that I made on Friday. I begged President Trump to make Bobby stop the shots. And I also said that, and I also, not to be mean or nothing, but I fear that President Trump's own people will begin to turn on him if these shots don't get stopped. But anyways, I know we were talking about it in the comments. If Bobby does he have the power of the pen to stop the, stop and start emergencies? And apparently, I think he does, from my understanding of it. But anyways, But you had said about, people have asked you like, why are you so black-pilled, or why, that, and you said about coming together and unity or whatever the couple words were. I'd like to ask you if you don't mind taking me off of your list of on Substack, because the banned list, I think, because I can't restack, I can't heart, and obviously I guess I can't comment. So I don't know when or
I'm
why.
not sure why you can't.
I don't know, and I'm glad that you said that, because now at least I know that it was a possible mistake, but I can't.
Yeah, so I want to say to everyone, by the way, Substack removes my subscribers. So right now is the reason I'm saying I am banned or censored is because they put a cap on my subscriptions, and they remove subscribers as long as when it starts reaching that cap, they start removing them. And I don't control it. So like people need to check periodically. And yeah, let me know. I'll go check, but yeah.
And I have to say, just you being here, Sasha, your stock with me has risen. And just because you're here in the public square and anybody can show up, and I know that it's a tough job doing what you're doing now. And I also know that there's a lot of people who basically talk shit about you with great frequency.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they have the chance to be here and hash it out in a public square. And when they don't show up, those types of people, at least with me, their stock lowers with me. But anyways, I just, not to say any more on that, but just God bless you, and excellent work as usual. God bless you.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Albert. Sasha, I just wanted to draw you. So welcome, Wolfgang. So actually, we were talking about the 2009 swine flu pandemic, which wasn't a pandemic, of course, it was a fake. But crucially, that document on the Council of Europe website actually documents that it was a fake. The result of the investigation, which Wolfgang forced because he was a politician as well as a medical doctor at the time, they came out with a report which is essentially blaming exactly the same people for this swine flu pandemic of 2009, as we know the people responsible for the 2020 debacle. Anyway, Lars Johansson is next in Sweden.
Hi, Sasha.
Hi, Lars.
I have a question for you regarding what they might come up with next, because they have tried a lot of psyops, monkeypox, etc. And last spring in April, the National Blueprint for Biodefense was published, which is a bioweapons 201 event 201 type exercise. So what have you seen out there? And I'll publish that now in the a link to it in the chat. Have you seen any attempts to do another one beyond this National Blueprint for Biodefense?
Well, so I'm just gonna post this is a video game that my husband made for me. It's called Astro Biodefense. Yesterday I published an article. I mean, they just use this biodefense category to loot the public money and profiteer off of and create a whole bunch of BS agencies, sub-agencies. So the most recent one was this Astro Biodefense, which was a conference or a presentation inside this bipartisan commission for biodefense. And they're claiming that now we have to be afraid about viruses from space. So the alien and alien stuff and UFO gets rolled out every now and then, and other people talked about how they use it as a psyop for what purposes. And so as I said, they're now claiming that we have to worry about viruses from space and pandemics from space. and all sorts of related issues. So and what next? I mean, they're probably going to use cyber events and to justify military law. Trump recently federalized police in DC, which technically he's allowed to do, but it is a very worrying sign. And he also, in the same vein, started claiming that he's going to do the same in Chicago and New York City and other large cities like Los Angeles and stuff like that. So that's a worrying sign, again, of consolidating power, rolling everything into executive branch, which is controlled by the military, and establishing some sort of a military martial law. Well, which they already are practicing. It's just that they are preparing to announce it publicly and like make it more on the surface.
Okay, so you haven't seen any specific Nipah virus developments or something like that?
Well, the Nipah virus is it's another, like the Nipah virus is also, it's BS, it's propaganda, it's poison. J.D. Vance, for example, worked on developing Nipah virus with National Resilience, which is a CIA company that cooks up all these biologics. And, there's no transmissible Nipah virus. They were torturing monkeys, sewing their brains out and like injecting them with this poison and harvesting it, and they were calling it Nipah virus. So like, seriously.
Sasha, I hope you don't mind, but Wolfgang, who is I think he's a virologist, or was a virologist, he's got his hand up. Did you want to make a point, Wolfgang?
Yes, I think we have to understand the whole bio war. I don't say biodefense, bio war in a different way. If somebody wants to kill people or make them ill or damage them in a way, it is very important that he can do this in an aimed way, in a limited way. Only those people he wants to damage. And so if you just have a virus, the virus doesn't obey. If there is a virus spreading, you cannot guide it. So we have all those planes around the world, and we have so many people traveling, and it's out of control. It's not controllable. If you want to have a bio war where you can control it, you have to have a virus with which you can frighten the people, where you have a PCR test and you can show the virus everywhere, and you tell them horrible pictures, how people die from this virus and all these things, and tell them what the laboratory has done, what dangerous things the laboratory has built. So really frighten people. And then you can say, but don't be afraid, we will save you. And with this defending the own people, you can exactly inject poison into people who want to be protected where you want it, where you want to aim. And I think when I asked ChatGPT, which is the better way for biowar, setting virus free or telling the people there is a virus and injecting poison? And he said very clear, the second is the more intelligent and much better way if you want to do a biowar. And this is what happened, nothing else.
Yes, exactly. I have written a series called How to Fake Pandemics on my Substack. It's a 4-part series of articles and related bioweapons fear porn articles. And they're all about the same. So I've traced, so US had official bioweapons development program from 1943 to 1969, when it was converted into infectious disease research, right? They continued and it increased funding and was called infectious disease research from 1969. But before that, they had official, it was largely secret, and official program, but there's a lot of documentation about what they were doing and what they were able to achieve. And they conclusively demonstrated to themselves that there is no such thing, they can't make a virus. So they were working on largely bacteria, growing bacteria such as anthrax. Anthrax is probably the only one that's kind of susceptible to putting them in bombs. So they were literally growing huge quantities of anthrax, and because it forms spores, it's resilient. They were putting it in bombs and trying to figure out, can we cause damage? What kind of damage? And ultimately, all of this, boils down to you can't create anything transmissible. If you create something really poisonous, then you are the first target. You who are deploying it, the closest to it, you are the first target for it. And so because of that, they started using other things. They started using simulants. They started using, a lot of it has to do with aerial spraying. So aerial spraying came from those programs. And they were using things like cadmium zinc sulfide, which I highly suspect was used here to simulate COVID. Because apparently Army always claimed it's safe, and they always claimed that they use these metal particles to study airflow. For some reason, you need to study it for decades and decades and decades. Anyway, but the zinc cadmium sulfide, it's a metal. And if you inhale metals, you get what's called welder's flu. So it's a flu that doesn't have a virus attached to it. It's being demonstrated, and even there were some congressional investigations in like 90s talking about it. They've shown that after spraying with the zinc cadmium sulfide over certain counties, those counties in the winter season had doubled pneumonia rates. So that's your perfect simulant for a respiratory virus. It's just one example. I mean, I'm sure they have others, but this is a very simple thing. So you could do that. And now you can spray from drones. You can spray on subways. You can, and they've demonstrated that aerial spraying will deliver these things into tall office buildings. And so, they will do that, and then they create a whole bunch of media panic to say we have a novel virus, and all of that, your faking of pandemic proceeds from there.
Sure. Wolfgang, do you want to come back quickly? You're muted, I think, Wolfgang. So anyway, we'll go to Thomas Binder because he's been waiting. So he's a medical doctor in Switzerland, Sasha.
Yeah.
And he was incarcerated in a psychiatric hospital for a forced opinion as to whether he was sane or not, but he'll tell you the story himself. Mm-hmm. Thomas, go ahead.
Hi, Sasha. Nice to meet you again. Thank you for your great overview. I just have one question. How can you know which VERS report is Colin Powell's?
We found
they are anonymous. How can you know this?
Yeah, we found it. So reading the text, I had one, like when I was looking into VERS data early on, I had one colleague who was kind of specializing in this, trying to find, famous people, people they could identify. And from Colin Powell's, from the text of the report, it's pretty evident it's him. The location, the date of death, it said it was a high-level government official, and his staffer submitted this report, and the age and all that. So that all matched Colin Powell. So we know it's Colin Powell.
Okay, thanks.
Have you got any other questions, Thomas?
Yeah, no, well, no real question. I mean, the comments are always the same. It's incredible what's happening. We know it for a long time. It was a great update from Sasha. Not really new, so we know it. The crazy thing is how many people collude with this. I mean, yeah, all governments. I mean, many are brainwashed, others are paid, others are blackmailed. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. For example, in Switzerland, the parliament decided that they want to have a word about these WHO changes. The international health regulation changes. The parliament voted, the majority voted that they have a say in this, and nothing happened. Huh? Our executive branch, the Federal Council, did not write the letter to the WHO director in time. And nothing happens in Switzerland. Just one journal mentions it a little bit, but absolutely nothing happens. So we must know again and again, there is only one thing that can help us, that is civil disobedience. We must educate the populace by such ways, but mainly in real life. If everybody of us educates just one person, we double, huh? So the enlightening grows exponentially. And I mean, we should not debate whether these modified RNA transfection platform must be forbidden or not. It won't, but it's not necessary. That's not the problem. The most important is that the people don't take it. I mean, the acceptance of these shots in Switzerland is, for example, is close to zero. This is the important thing. We must educate the populace. And yeah, Wolfgang,
Thomas, do you have any strong
want
views
to say
on
something? Hi, Wolfgang.
Hi. Yes, if I may, I think there are two things which we have to watch very closely. One is that the Oracle boss, he told that Trump was fascinated about it, that he wants to fight cancer with AI, and that they want to analyze, they find there's cancer cells in your blood, and then they sequence it, and then they will make antibodies. They will.
Oh, he's frozen.
You've frozen, Wolfgang. So, Thomas, while sorry, Wolfgang, you're back.
They terrify the people. They won't terrify the people because of some virus, but each doctor has the possibility, if he's well paid for it, to terrify his patients, to frighten his patients, and to kill his patients with RNA. This is one way. And the other way will be that they can do nanoparticles with RNA into food. It's easy. You can put it into food. It passes through the intestine, and it goes into the lymph node of the intestine, and you will be very much damaged. Your immune system, you can make very big damage, and you can aim a group. You can choose the group with which food you do it. Sometimes here, sometimes there. It's a very, very hidden thing. And we are not able to control the food production, which is sold in our supermarkets. We cannot. So if we want to protect ourselves, we have to know where our food comes from and whether we can be sure or not. So this is, I think those two things, the cancer topic and the food topic, are for me the most dangerous topics. And we should speak about them very often so that
you're freezing now and again, Wolfgang.
That they know we will watch it.
We must know, of course, that this was just the start. Another thing is self-amplifying mRNA, that might cause shedding, true shedding, because it can replicate. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things will come. This was just the beginning. If not, I mean, imagine, if not, they would have killed the wrong people, because they didn't kill us. So they created a strong opposition for the moment that was protected from their assassination attempts. So they must aim at us as well in the future, I guess.
And pharmaceutical companies are happy because they create new patients, seriously ill patients for a long time, chronically ill patients who need very expensive drugs. So it's such a big mafia you can hardly imagine. All those profiteers from these criminal acts, there are thousands of it. It starts with the doctor and it doesn't end with the pharmaceutical company.
So Wolfgang and Thomas, thank you for your. I wanted to ask both of you whether you have strong views on what Sasha has told us tonight, that but some of us knew this before, that the fake continuing state of emergency in the USA is going to go on for another 4.5 years without justification to the American people or indeed the world. Wolfgang, maybe if you turn your video off, you won't keep freezing all the time.
Oh, yes. I think the most important, Sasha says, is that we have to speak out what we know. This is so important, to be open, to speak out what we know. honestly.
I
And
understand that.
if we are sure, we can say it. If we're not sure, we have to say it. But I think we should have a very intensive debate, and we should fight against each other, but we should speak out.
Yes. So Wolfgang, do you have any strong views on this fake continuing state of emergency in the USA, which seems absolutely key to me? There's absolutely no justification, medical or in the interest of America or the world. So treasonous intent, in my opinion. And yet, Sasha states that all the people are hiding behind the PrEP Act, you know, the state of emergency, which is going to last till December of 2029. When it never had any currency at all, in my opinion.
Well, it's called Agenda 2030, so it must last until 2030, of course.
Yes, but that doesn't justify it. It's fraud and it's treason.
No, nothing justifies anything. What's happening for, well, actually for decades, centuries, if you go deep into the rabbit hole. Huh?
Sure. So you have no views on, you know, well, look, I'm a big supporter of Trump in the absence of any other leader with any possibilities at all, in my opinion, and without the energy as well. But he can't have it both ways. He can't be saying that he's working for the American people. And in the meantime, the whole of America is engulfed in this state of emergency, pushing the false narrative, giving currency to the false narrative of endless pandemics in the future, and that we were threatened, and that the invocation of this state of emergency in the USA was justified. It was never justified. So that's what I'm trying to get. So is it a key issue, do you think, Thomas?
I stated once and again that I think Trump was elected to convince the conservatives that were not already brainwashed about those globalist technocrat agenda.
Maybe.
Now, how will digital ID be enforced in the US? Oh, well, these illegal immigrants, we can only control this invasion by digital ID. And so on and so forth. And look at his cabinet. It is dominated by Palantir, Peter Thiel's Palantir. Peter Thiel gave J.D. Vance $15 million to become senator in 2022. Vance is a Palantir guy. Palantir. Now we heard some time ago, I heard that even the UK is selling their health data to Palantir.
Yes,
So
they are. Yes, I've seen that too.
Palantir obviously has the duty to collect all those data, to connect our genome with our health record, with our bank account, with our social security number, with our geolocation, with our political worldview, and it even detects who he has to kill. Yes, as they already did in Gaza. I think this is the future. This is the future.
So, Thomas, can we agree that this is human hubris in action?
It's the
lack of humility
battle between evil and good. Since March 2020, I say what we see here is the final battle between evil and good.
Yes.
However you call it, evil, whether you call the evil devil or psychopaths or whatever, and the good ones, the good people are empathetic people like me who just want to live a good life in some economic security and peace. And we are about 98%. And those really criminal psychopaths are only a fraction of the 2% psychopaths.
Absolutely.
The majority, they are always afraid of us. And now, for the first time in history, they have the technical means to totally control us, and they use this.
Yeah. So thank you, Thomas. So I think in summary, I thought that the human species and human beings were better than this, you know, and for me, the journey began in 2020. It never made sense, and it still doesn't. So anyway, Chuck Fall, I think it is. Thank you so much, Thomas, and Wolfgang, who's still with us.
Hi, Sasha. Thanks for being here. And I'm a fan of yours. And so I'm active in the in a group called Truth Action Project. And we would love to have you on as a guest. Where I'm at personally, though, with the whole COVID event, is that it's basically a state crime. And you and your COVID dossier, basically show how it was made legal in effect. I mean, I understand your point that there's nothing illegal occurred, but at bottom there's a fraud. And apparently fraud is something that you
You're also freezing, Chuck. So
can't rationalize away with. Excuse me?
you froze then for a few seconds.
Oh, okay, I'm going to take my picture out. Okay, yeah. So I guess I think we in our truth movement need to recognize and call what is happening, and that is that there is this plutocratic power structure, and they really do wicked and evil things. And if we don't, have a revolution, and I say we should have an egalitarian revolution, and I put the work of John Spritzler from Substack. And just like the colonials said, no, we're not going to have a king anymore. And just like the abolitionists said, we're not going to have slavery anymore in our country. Now we need to say, nope, we're not going to have a plutocracy anymore. We're not going to have this hidden, wicked, evil, powerful cabal. How do we accomplish this? Well, okay, we have to start a national, international conversation and the Five Eyes nations are the ones, because they're all Anglophile nations, but we're all subject through the NATO apparatus and the military connections. It's just an amazing indictment that you bring in your work. So in the face of this, what do? I think we need to say, ditch the rich. I think we need to have an international, global, revolutionary, democratic movement. And I invite everyone on this call to consider that as a possibility to make a common, united front. And how does that get accomplished? Well, read John Spritzler. He's a radical egalitarian. There's simple reforms we could be advancing as a coherent kind of political truth activist movement. So I'm going to stop. This is so I'll just say this. I love you on Shannon Joy. I love Shannon Joy. I love the freedom movement. And there are there's voices out there. We need to get out of our silos and build our across the movement.
Correct, Chuck. I agree with you. So we need to find our best advocates. I agree with you.
That's what I wanted to share.
And Sasha is one of them.
Yes, we need a coherent message of critique. Sasha's out there. Sasha is a leader.
So she documents crucially what they've done, changes in the law, and somehow they think that it justifies the fraud and the treason. It doesn't. It doesn't. It never did, and it never will. So anyway, right. Richard Amerling.
Yeah, hi, Sasha. Just observing Trump and RFK Jr. from my perspective, going back to the beginning of the 2020 era. I mean, I think Trump made huge errors, obviously, in endorsing Operation Warp Speed, agreeing to the lockdowns, which I still hold against him. And I think it's inevitable to come to the view that he is beholden to Big Pharma. I mean, that's just how I see it. They probably helped pay for his legal defense while he was being attacked unmercifully by the Democrats the last 4 years, and he probably owes them. And he brought in RFK Jr. With a deal. RFK Jr. must have been told that you can do whatever you want, but leave the vaccines alone, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what the deal was, because he never mentions them really until recently. But we know that RFK Jr. knows the truth about vaccines. So it's inevitable that he will do some sort of end run around the whole setup with pharma. And, I think all we have to do, as Thomas said, is make them non-mandatory and inform people as to how destructive they are. No one will take them. I mean, the uptake is already way down. not just for COVID vaccines, but also the childhood vaccines. And the childhood vaccine schedule is the gravy train that supports Big Pharma. There's just no question about it. If you pull that away, they're going to be hurting. They won't have as much money.
Yeah, no, I know that. I just, I don't quite share your optimism that RFK Jr. is going to do anything about it. I mean, it seems to me in the recent sort of recent chain of events, for some reason, they're still receptive to the public opinion, which is surprising to me, given the structure that they built for themselves that is not dependent on it at all. But they still seem to care, which is, I think, our most powerful weapon. That's why I'm so upset at most of the health freedom movement that they are supporting MAHA BS and MAHA propaganda. And what I'm asking people purely, like, do what Shannon and I and Naomi Wolf and Mary Tyler Bowden have been doing, is calling it how it is and calling the truth and not applauding their idiotic moves like, oh yeah, we're replacing sugar with Coca-Cola. We're supposed to celebrate that, or even removing mercury from vaccines. Well, okay, you take one poison out of 1,000, you're still injecting 999. It's not a win. It's not a win at all. And so that's what I ask everyone to do, because they seem to still care. It still seems to affect their decisions. So such that, for example, when we started doing that, now RFK Jr. seems to be pushing against Trump, and this whole MAHA commission delay to me indicates that they're like yelling and screaming at each other, which they should be. It
I
means
agree.
they're finally like actually doing the job that they were hired to do by the voters.
I agree. We have to keep
We have to keep
keep the
the
pressure on. Keep the
pressure.
pressure on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. So, Richard, do you know Richard? He's a medical doctor. I can't remember in which state, Richard.
Florida.
Florida, yeah. Everybody's in Florida.
Yeah. Sasha recently was kind enough to restack one of my posts on Substack. I appreciate that greatly. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Okay. So, and the next question is from Anders Brunstad, who's in Norway. Anders, question rather than statement.
First, I will say I'm a great supporter of you, Sasha, and Catherine Watt and James Roguski. So you've done fantastic work revealing, let's say, the secret of what DOD or whoever is behind this have done. And this is definitely not a medical situation. It's a bioweapon story. I have sent you some information on your email, and I don't want to go into that now. I would say the setup potential, which you mentioned, is really critical. But let's say it is like the IgG4 from the study. It is a signal of something wrong. It doesn't mean it cannot be corrected. So I'm a kind of student under Robert Oldham Young, and he has sold 10 million books of the pH miracle on how to improve the setup potential, being to lifting up the, let's say, from 20, 25 millivolt cell level to maybe 70, 80 millivolt cell level, which is a big difference. And most people don't really realize this, because the setup potential is a mirror image of pH. So if you get above 7.5 pH, you get maybe to 60, 70 millivolt. So the healing is, let's say, and the problem with all these vaccines and chemtrails and toxic food, which Wolfgang mentioned, is that they are harmful toxins, and these are bringing down the setup potential by having a positive ionized, let's say, toxins, and you need to detox these, let's say, harmful toxins to bring it up, but you also need to go into minerals and vitamins. And another dimension is the 5G or radiation story, which has been going on since 1890. So I know you realize this, and there is a logic hidden there, but it's a very complex logic. And I would like to invite you to look into this in a scientific way, where we look into, let's say, the multiple causes of why the zeta potential is being degraded, and it means that the pH is going down, and that is, let's say, likely the causation for cancer and so many diseases. Because what is long COVID? What is ME? What is many things, you know? It might be that your blood doesn't deliver enough oxygen to your cells.
Yeah, exactly. I have been using myself, I've written about it, and I have a few other articles scheduled on this topic of zeta potential. So I have been using Zeta Aid. By the way, I highly recommend, I can put in chat. So ZetaAid.com.
That's fine. So
yeah, and
I would just add that this is very important, and the detox is possible a way out of the toxins. So you have, let's say, harmful, let's say, food which is sprayed with chemicals, which is subject to fertilizers, which is subject to chemtrails. Okay, there are many toxins. Ecological food, they don't allow chemicals, they don't allow fertilizers. So what I found, Sasha, is that, like Maria Chrysler has found, Robert Young and many others, they are hiding now in the EPA and European, let's say, environmental organizations. They are collaborating maybe with the devil, to say, that they are accepting toxins and graphene and carbon nano, let's say, technology into the food, into the pesticides, into the glyphosate, into the fertilizers. And this is proven by identification, proven into the raindrops. So this is something I have challenged to Mary Holland, and I know Robert Bobby knows about this. So I don't think, you know, he went out very recently about the aluminium. It was never tested for safety. So he's on the good road. It might take some time. It's a big organization. He needs to bring people along, you know. But I wanted to say something about Trump. You know, Trump, to me, is a little bit of a mirror image to Ronald Reagan. And we perceived Ronald Reagan rather good, but he was behind the 1986 vax law, child vax law. And then he was booming up the military-industrial complex, which was happy. They made the arm industry happy, and we see Trump is doing the same. So he's making the lobby of the pharma and the military-industrial complex happy, and it's a mirror image. So we shouldn't believe that Trump is a saint, and I think you know that very well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anders. So
yeah.
Glenn Macko is next. Sasha.
Yeah, so I just to finish off on Zeta potential and Zeta Aid,
Right.
I think in general it will help any vaccine injured, and in fact, well, I started using it because I live at high altitude and I exercise, I mountain bike, and I noticed decreased performance with especially very high altitude, like going above 8,000 feet. On the mountain bike, and I started looking into hydration and all that, and eventually arrived at the Zeta potential thing. It's a freaking miracle. I've never had anything work so well for anything, and so I increased my heart rate. Even though I've exercised all my life, I've been a competitive runner. I stopped running in my 40s. I started mountain biking. I've been mountain biking for 14 years. So my heart rate was always around 60 beats per minute, even though I'm highly conditioned. It's now 50 beats per minute. And so it went down by 10 beats per minute in just about 2 months of using it. I wear no makeup. I'm 54 years old, and wrinkles disappeared, actually. My hair improved. My sleep improved. I am biking. I've established new records on my mountain biking, ascending. I recently did 2,600 feet in one ride, and I could do more, but there was a thunderstorm. I had to turn around. It's amazing. So I'm saying in general, all things being equal, it will help everyone, and especially vaccine injured. Now, I caution, because I'm not a doctor, I can't tell you about everything. There should, there could be some interactions, especially if people are taking multiple drugs. So you have to think about it and test. But in general, it's pretty innocuous. So it's basically it's a compound. It's potassium citrate and baking soda. That's all it is. So it does increase your pH. So you're becoming more alkaline, and that in general helps to reestablish oxygen flow, especially in the capillaries. And that's why it delivers the nutrients and oxygen to all organs very well. And that's how you're becoming you literally grow younger by using it.
Yeah. So where am I up to? I forgot. So Glenn, have we? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Sasha. It's good to see you again. I went back and looked at some of my connections, and you and I did 3 major group presentations. One was in the summer of 2022, another in the fall of 2022, and then the last one was in January of 2023 when we did the large press conference with you, Sam Dubay, Catherine, Philip Altman, and Dr. Pete Chambers. All of which got very, very high viewings. Now, I'm going to go on 2 different question avenues. One is around ways to unify people in reactions and responses, but the other is from a technical viewpoint. I have a question for you about the vaccines. Are you familiar with the nanolipid panel, the nanolipid envelopes mechanism inside the vaccines?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you aware of how those lipid panels get marked and labeled?
Marked and labeled for what?
Well, they're done by the manufacturers for the people studying things. That they basically imprint them with an electronic ID, so that once they distribute through the body, if they're using a mix of different nanoparticles, they can distinguish between them on what parts of the body they flow to.
I have not seen any evidence of that.
Okay, so you're not familiar with it, so I won't ask the follow-up question on that. Since you have been very active in a lot of different avenues and a lot of different delivery structures, I was wondering if you could share your sense of who some of the very best investigative journalists have been.
Investigative journalists. I am not sure in what on vaccines and COVID.
Yes, I mean in this arena of the vaccines and vaccines injuries that for which you and the legal side of that you've been interviewed for on both who the criminals are and what the damages have been.
Well, as far as journalists, you mean like accredited journalists?
I mean, Charlie. Laura Logan is a journalist.
Yeah, so she's good, but she doesn't cover any of this. And so there are some journalists that are, I find okay, but none of them talk about this. None of them will have it at all. And we tried to place our COVID dossier. We actually did an outreach to what we consider sort of good journalists all over the world, and we got very, very little traction, very little interest.
Okay.
Cheryl Atkinson is a propagandist. She is a liar. Okay, she's a liar. She won't touch this topic, and I tried to approach her. I directly on Substack, on X. She will not confront anyone, and she will not mention Operation Warp Speed. She will not mention PrEP Act, no countermeasures, no nothing. She's just Trump,
Have either on here or on other locations, have you listened much to Jerome Corsi?
I don't know that person.
Okay.
You should be in contact with him, Sasha. I can. How on earth do I remember that now? So I'll put you in contact with Jerome. He's a publisher.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, if you know of anybody who you think is a good journalist and may be interested in his material, by all means, of course, I'll talk to anyone.
Yeah, well, the crucial thing with Jerome, he knows a lot of people in America.
Are you familiar with Todd Callender?
Yeah, I talked to Todd. He's pretty good.
One of the things that he was on many weeks ago, and I spoke with him, and one of the things I'm trying to do is make sure where there's a difference of opinion that we get the dialogue progressing to the point of coming to an actual answer to things. One of the items that he promotes is that the shots were used to, in fact, give a electronic address to individuals.
Nobody has been able to demonstrate it.
I'm going to explain what's going on there. The other person that did that substantially was Karen Kingston, and she, within one of her videos, she had a person going through a cemetery and saying, "Look, we got an address here, we got an address here." The reality on that is the electronic addresses that exist are on the lipid nanoparticles. This is a standard thing inside of the lipid nanoparticle industry. Is
okay, fine, but like
what I'm getting at is so this is a problem in that Todd was fooled, and so was Karen, into thinking that people were getting individual addresses when they weren't. They were just getting, that was a batch set of addresses that were included, and so there were tens of thousands of people that would have addresses in them, but they were all from the same batch. They weren't individualized. And so that was a flaw in his thinking. And to some extent, it's fairly easy to debunk that. And the people that divide and conquer us, they're experts at this. They know how to identify something that's a flaw, and then they accent that and diminish a person's presence. And in that particular case, that diminished Todd's presence. And again, there's a number of these kind of technical areas that if we get together the right set of experts and have the right kind of moderated debate of an expert panel over multiple meetings, I believe we can get to a tremendous result of things and a high confidence set of where the real truth lies. So I want to point that out, and I can contact you about if you're willing to be part of such a panel to advance that in the future.
Right. I don't want to debate MAC addresses. Okay, that's not my interest at all. I respect people. They can go look, investigate whatever they want, but it's not.
I'm only using that as an example of how what Mr. Global, some people call, or the globalists get described. I prefer to name him. It's primarily George Soros and his various networks, but he is an expert at stirring the pot with mud and confusing people sufficiently that they don't feel they really understand what's going on and can move and act forward. So it's that mud I'm trying to eliminate by getting appropriate experts together.
Glenn, you need an expert in counter propaganda. We're very bad at counter propaganda on our side, extremely bad.
I know of several. I know of 3 distinct ones, some of which came through this avenue. So I don't need any additional because I believe I have the top ones.
All right, you need psychologists as well in that. Anyway, So thank you so much, Glenn. And is your surname Mako, by the way? It isn't, is it?
You're muted.
You're muted, Glenn. You're muted.
This is a quirky thing. I was born on October 6th, 1952. My father's parents were both immigrants from Russia. So I'm born on October 6th, 1952. On October 7th, 1952, Vladimir Putin was born. So I'm 1 day older, and I'm 5'10", and he's only 5'7" and 3 inches taller. So I'd like to think I have better stature, if anyone else would agree. Thank you.
Is Putin only 5'7"? Oh wow, yeah.
Well, when I did the search for him, that's what came up. He's clearly way shorter than Trump. So I mean, they may have underplayed that, and he's actually 5'8" or 5'9", but he's not a tall man. I mean,
perhaps that's why he doesn't like meeting Trump until he gets.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Well, Trump thought he was going to Russia yesterday. I was amazed to. He's not going to Russia. He's going to Alaska. Anyway, Ellen. Well, of course, that was part of Russia. Ellen?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Sasha. I'm also a fan of yours. Like Chuck Fall said, I'm also an activist with the Truth Action Project.
Ellen, we don't need a
I'll get to the
resume
questions.
about you.
Okay,
We
all
just
right.
want the questions for Sasha.
Yeah, okay. Specifically, just, ideas that came up. But one was, are you aware of the countermeasures, vaccine countermeasures law? I love what you said about countermeasures, but there was in 2004 a Congressional Homeland Security Fauci act that was put in regarding vaccine countermeasures that gave billions of dollars to fund the Fort Detrick CRISPR lab, where they'd be. And the concept of a vaccine countermeasure.
So, Ellen, what's the question again?
Okay,
Sorry.
I just wanted to see if the way she described countermeasures was very important, but vaccine countermeasures as a Department of Defense term was, we have to develop vaccines because the Chinese are going to develop them. And so we need to have, are they going to be, sending, novel viruses here, and we need to have something to fight them. So that went in with Homeland Security. So, that'd be one question. Are you aware of that act?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the same. The vaccine countermeasures, drug countermeasures, it's all countermeasures. They're all, even propaganda and protocols themselves, even using, so they're also saying, oh, well, so they issue fact checks on me saying, no, it's FDA regulated products are, countermeasures FDA regulated products, because some of the products are used, that are used are approved by the FDA as medicines. So for example, opioids, right? So you have opioids as approved drugs used for medicinal purposes for pain management. And they're saying, well, these are approved, but then they're used as part of the COVID murder protocol as countermeasures. So what people need to understand, the countermeasure defines the use. Like a kitchen knife is not a weapon until it's used as a weapon. So if it's used as a weapon, it's a countermeasure. Otherwise, it's a kitchen knife. The same thing with the opioid. When it's a medicinal product, it's subject to regulation as a medicinal product. When it's used or authorized to use as a countermeasure as part of the COVID murder protocol, it becomes a countermeasure, no longer a medicinal product, and it's subject to that. So the prevailing law is the countermeasure law.
Yeah, okay. And I guess what I was getting at, though, is, trying to figure out how to stop that. If it's Department of Defense countermeasures, I love what you said that, the government is controlled by the people behind the Department of Defense, the private interest groups. And, ultimately, I'm trying to expose that and stop it. But, as you are, but it's, I guess, so much, I study the deep state, seems to you know, like they'll say, well, that's their law, or that's national security, or that's classified.
Yeah,
or,
what's
you
the
know.
question, Ellen? Have you got a-
Okay, so and another one. What about AIDS? You know, the HIV virus. We have Lynn Horowitz coming on tonight. I hope people would come to the Truth Action. But he's done a lot of work with. He had AIDS. Are you aware of Lynn Horowitz and his book Emerging Viruses, AIDS and Ebola? But he's been outing like Fauci and Gallo, going back in the 90s, Department of Defense. He has the actual contracts, but his thing, the AIDS virus. I actually knew a guy at Special Forces that knew they were putting HIV virus on missiles at Area 51. And what I like about Lynn Horowitz, he calls it the COVID coup. The COVID is a coup, the rise of the Fourth Reich. And I think that's
So,
why.
Ellen, I've lost track of your question. What is the question?
So the question is, would you agree that this is a coup? And if so, how can we, I don't know what law applies to coups, right? Because they've been in denial.
That's the problem.
Treason.
The genocides are always conducted by the government, and they're never prosecuted because they're sanctioned by the government using sovereign government liability shield. And that's what I'm trying to explain to people, that there is no sort of legal way to overturn this or vote yourself out of it. The only real weapon we have is personal non-compliance and pushing back, as I was giving examples, that it does seem to affect the actions of the HHS, that when we call their BS and do it, publicly. So just remove your trust until they do something that actually, improves your trust. Don't applaud their BS things like, removing food dyes and, talking about beef tallow and all that nonsense. And so that's the only thing we have is do not comply, call their BS. There are few of them. There are many more of us. If we say no, they can't they can't kill us all. They can't track us all. They can't like capture us all. It just doesn't work until they're only doing it hoping that people will comply with it.
I agree. Yes. And I guess so changing the narrative, he mentioned people. What about, are you in connection with Robert Malone and
Robert Malone is part of the criminal cartel, isn't he?
Okay. All right. Yeah, there's so
He
much.
is one of the leaders of the criminal cartel and profiteers off of it.
Yeah, but he describes 5G. What about Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan? That's what we're trying to do with Truth Action Project,
They will never touch this material. Like they will never have me. I'm sure. I know Tucker Carlson is aware of my material and Joe Rogan is aware of my material. They will never touch it. Never.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Ellen, for the questions. Anders, do you have a quick question? Because we're about to finish. So thank you so much, Sasha.
Just very quick.
For being
Sasha,
so generous
you're
with
really
your time.
great. I see that you struggle with going into the Mac story, which I fully understand.
I don't struggle.
say
I just ask people, can you please show me an experiment? Hopefully, you can use a person if they claim they have. I've said open invitation numerous times on my social media. Anybody who has a MAC address is welcome to come and be interviewed by me and demonstrate your MAC address, how it works, how it's triggered, what's in it. I understand there's literature. I agree there's literature.
So I just want to say I had ex-friends, I would say ex-friends, indirectly connected to Robert Young, connected to the research done by, let's say, a detox product, Masterpiece, and I don't want to validate them at all, but let's say there is a study, and there are 3 studies connecting this, but I don't want to go there. What I want to say you that we don't need to go there. What we need to do is just to see at the evidence which you have got from me, and I want you to honestly look at it and say you are a great scientist, and I hope we can work together to see what I've seen, it took me a while to see it, but let's say radiation is part of the problem.
Thank you. So Shasta has put her hand up, and
okay.
she
Hi.
helps me quite a lot with guests, in particularly in California. Go ahead, Shasta. Are you there, Shasta? We can't hear you now, Shasta. We did hear you. I don't know what's happened now. Shasta, you've cut off your
Fraud,
sound. I don't know. Oh,
can you hear me?
yes, now we can. Yeah.
Okay, if fraud could be proven, or if are there any exceptions that to the PrEP Act liability shield?
No, yeah, so fraud actually is part of it. Fraud does not overturn it. Fraud is a feature and part of the PrEP Act and all of these countermeasure protocols. It's a requirement actually to commit fraud.
Okay.
So they made it legal. Now the PrEP Act says willful misconduct. It's really narrowly defined, extremely hard to prove, almost impossible to prove. I don't think anybody will be able to prove it in court. And so in fact they prosecute doctors like Dr. Kirk Moore. I was assisting in his defense, and thank God but they did like a huge show prosecution out of him. He had to spend $1 million defending himself, and the Trump Justice Department was prosecuting him for they went through a week of trial, and then said, oh, we're dropping it. So it's just to maximize the financial damage, the psychological damage, all sorts of damage. Anyway, so Kirkmore was disobeying the protocols, and that gets prosecuted. If you obey the protocols, you have the government liability shield. That's how it's set up.
Okay. So but proven willful misconduct is one thing they have as an exception.
Yeah, but it's nobody be able to prove it.
No one has done it yet.
Yeah, and it's
Willful
not like there's the way they define it. It's circular. It's basically circular.
Circular.
Like conduct. Proper conduct is what we tell you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's how the law is written. And also HHS was sending legal clarification memos to the healthcare system throughout this whole thing. And they were clarifying and saying, if you kill people or injure people, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it basically said, causing death or injury, you just report it to us within 7 days, and then it's fine. As long as you follow our protocols, you're absolved. So how are you going to prove willful misconduct? Who willfully misconducted what? If they are murdering people.
So Sasha, how does it make sense that lawyers who are supposed to have respect for the law change the law to essentially, and one of the things they do is in the process of changing the law to whatever the emergency that is not an emergency, that fraud is permitted. Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, absolutely, fraud is permitted. So that you're allowed.
How does that make sense? How can any lawyer worth the name stand up in front of the public and defend that?
For money, I guess people do anything. So I wasn't there. I don't know how they did it, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me in the least because that's how governments behave all the time.
Thank you, Sasha. I appreciate
it. It may be how they behave, but surely we need to call it out. So we don't need the detail. We just need to call out.
Yeah, that's why my takeaway message: call it out. Call it out all the time. Don't buy into MAHA bullshit. Call it out.
Yeah. So who have you called this out to?
Everyone. I said directly this to RFK Jr.
And I imagine you got a sheepish response.
Well, as I said, I can't discuss the response, but he knows. So.
Well, good that he knows, because it's just crazy, isn't it? Look, we can't do anything if these people are legalizing fraud, because in criminal law in the UK and the USA, I think, if you use fraud, straight away you're a criminal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, so very quickly, Glenn.
Yeah, is Jerry Brady listening? If he is, could he come off mic? I have a very quick question.
I don't know whether he's
related
on.
to the
Let me
lipid
just have a quick look.
nanoparticles.
Yeah, I don't. Wow.
All right, if
It's
he's
early
not
in the
listening,
morning
then
in Australia.
okay, thanks. I guess I won't reach him right now. I'll contact him directly myself. Thanks.
Okay, Glenn, thank you. So Sasha, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. You always were, and you know, in those dark days. And I was surprised that we had you 4 times. I know in my mind, we had you 3 times, maybe. Also, it's only 1 more, but yeah, that makes sense. But you were a big voice in those terrible years. Well, and those years are continuing. That's why I'm so exercised by this. So I'll try and get you in touch with Jerome Corsi, Sasha.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I mean, as I said, anyone who, if you think there's a journalist even remotely, you know, honest.
Well, yes, I know we do know some journalists. So, but I think a good starting point for you would be Jerome Corsi. So he's the guy who was at the center of the Russiagate thing, it turned out. So the FBI didn't believe his story, and but he was telling the truth. I'm satisfied that he was, and they indicted him, federally indicted him, and then offered him a plea deal, and he told them, "I will not accept your plea deal, even if I have to go to." Even if I have to go to prison for the rest of my life, I will not lie before God.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what everybody's position should be today.
And they didn't indict him, Sasha.
Yeah.
They dropped it. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. And
Yes.
yeah, so my materials you can find, and people were asking questions on Substack. Please subscribe and check periodically that you are subscribed. Because, as I said, they remove my subscribers.
And the only other person I know who's been federally indicted in the United States is Kirk Moore. I didn't know that he spent $1 million on lawyers. That's dreadful.
Yeah, they were, this prosecution was like, well, you know, so from 2021, and they just, you know, just dropped it a week into a trial. You know.
Yes, and you're right. The psychological damage from all the stress of that is not, it's not possible to measure it. I can understand that. Yes, thank you so much, Sasha.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So you can all talk as long as you like. From my point of view, Charles has resigned for tonight, I think. So, but oh, I'll stop the recording. How do I do that?